what is a memory you have of social media?
I have memories on social media, but
what are your memory of social media? Is there a time when you're like, oh, I remember that time I was having that great conversation with someone or that connection I made? You don't, right? Everything out there that matters, even everything on social media, even everything on Instagram, is the stuff that happens in the real world. It's that one that's the only one that matters. It's the only world that matters, right? And I think that's, the thing that we had lost or we're losing sight of. And maybe in some way we're sort of realizing that and trying to reclaim it.
Welcome back to episode 8 of the Look Up podcast. This was a really fun episode. I had the opportunity to interview David Sax. David is a Washington Post best-selling author of a book called Revenge of the Analog. He wrote it about 2.5 years ago, and it really focused on the resurgence of analog entertainment, records, creative tools like Moleskine notebooks, in-person meetings coming back as opposed to conference calls and distributed teams. A lot of trends that we've seen over the last few years as people kind of have a bit of more of an aversion or a deeper understanding of the negative consequences of the march forward of technology. What's really cool about David is it's not that he's a Luddite. I mean, he obviously uses technology. We just filmed this on Zoom and use Zencastr to record. We reference it in the episode. It's actually my first episode not done in person. It's more of trying to say it's not technology good, analog bad, this binary outcome, or technology bad, analog good. It's how do we merge the two to live better lives, and why are both important. And so, David is he's quite a character, and I think you'll enjoy the episode. We talk about a bit about his use of technology, how he allows his kids, his 2 young kids, to interact with their technology. We talk a bit about how things have evolved since he wrote the book. We talk about entrepreneurship, and we have a lot of fun along the way. So I hope you enjoy the episode. And without any more of my babbling, here's David Sax. So I think we have to talk a little bit about the irony here. This is the first episode that I've not recorded in person. We're here on Zoom for video, Zencastr for audio. We've been going back and forth on email all morning.
And now we'd like to thank our new sponsors, Zoom and Zencastr.
Yeah, I think Zoom's doing just fine. I don't think they're going to need me to...
And Squarespace and Casper.
To sponsor. Yeah.
Oh, they sponsor you, Mark. That's how podcasting works.
Oh, okay. Got it. Yeah, I don't know if they need to sponsor me. I think Zoom has enough reach already.
Someone's got to spend that venture capital money, and it always gets the podcasters. They're it's a slush fund, it's a tax write-off.
It's true. It's just more money flowing into the system. And well, I don't know if there's enough podcasts out there, but I figured I'd throw one more into the mix.
Definitely not. Yeah.
But I figured it's funny. I mean, we were supposed to meet in Toronto, so I appreciate you taking the time on a video conference on an early Thursday morning in Toronto.
Not that early.
What's the weather like over there? I mean, I feel like that's the customary question I have to ask.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. Good spring day, sunny, a little chilly, but warming up.
Wonderful. I think it's nice. I'm not here in Los Angeles. It's we've got some gray skies and pretty chilly as well.
Over.
I know nobody's gonna leave the house today. That's what happens when you get a day off from school and when it's cloudy. No, but anyways, thank you again for coming on. I think what I'd like to start with is, so you wrote Revenge of the Analog now 2.5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this is a little late in the game. I'm sure you're probably you're done with the book tour, you're on to your next book, which we'll talk about later. But 2.5 years later, has anything that you wrote about changed, or any of your opinions changed on the topic?
It's an interesting question. I was talking about this with someone yesterday. I think the sort of core of the book about the resurgence of analog goods and ideas, especially the sort of visible things like the return of vinyl records and books in bookstores. At the time that the book came out, that was really in the forefront. And it wasn't, I think for some people it was surprising, but for other people it was like, yes, okay, this is why this is happening. Great. But, the other part of the book was really about the revenge of analog ideas. And that was sort of, hey, there's value in doing things face to face. There's value in the real. And there's a danger in, oversubscribing to the benevolence of digital technology. And, at the time that came out, it was still, I guess, a bit of a fringe opinion. Wait, but, social media is good, and look at all the stuff it does, and look at all the wonderful things about technology. And ironically, or unfortunately for me, the book came out. The book was published on the day of the election of President Trump, right? And that really marked a sea change in all sorts of things. But especially, I think it was the official end of the honeymoon of Silicon Valley. It laid bare, and in the weeks and months afterward, is evidence of all this sort of voter manipulation and misinformation and data harvesting and spying and all this wonderful stuff came out. That sort of benevolence of technology and digital technology is this unalloyed good. I mean, nobody can say that with a straight face today and be taken seriously. The sort of TED Talk evangelical broadcast that, this new thing's going to change the world and we're all going to end up happier. I don't think anybody's naive enough to believe that now, or at least the majority. And so what really shifted wasn't that, all of a sudden more people started buying vinyl records. The growth of that has continued at the same sort of pace as it has over the past 12 or 15 years, really when I started looking at the phenomenon. But I think that bigger question, which is what you're looking at, of what is this stuff that we brought into our lives and what is it doing to us? And let's actually go back and reevaluate that. That bigger question is something that's really come to the fore. And so that's something that, I expected an experience, but I didn't expect it to happen so quickly and in such a big way.
Yeah, I think that's
all it took was the return of fascism and a couple of genocides that were organized on social media.
Wow, right? That's crazy.
That's it. That's all it took. Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely, I think, you can't read the news today without seeing a Silicon Valley elite kind of held over the fire at this point. I think most people, even 2 days ago, there was a lot of heat on Elon Musk. Even though he's not really developing, he's at least going after, space and electric cars and whatnot. But at least, Zuckerberg was on the hot seat and still is on the hot seat for a lot of the practices at Facebook. So that makes sense. I think it's for the best that we're at least asking questions now.
Yeah.
What are the negative impacts of this technology? One thing you mentioned is the values of analog communication. You mentioned in the book, and you just mentioned it here. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, analog communication, in essence, is conversation between people, right? Face-to-face conversation, or I guess on a telephone if you want to use that. But I think it's something that, again, we thought we would be able to replace, or we thought we would be able to substitute for, digital communication, whether it was speaking on Skype or FaceTime or something like Zoom, or social media, right? That you could, collate everything and all your communication into these various formats, email, messaging, social media. And that would, be an effective substitute for the types of communications that you do by going places, going to meetings, meeting up with people, that they were really interchangeable. And the same information was sort of getting across. And especially in the workplace, right? This was sort of, like the paperless office, the great sort of, thing from really the 2000 on, what wasn't even the paperless office, it was the personless office. It was the idea that, it's more efficient to have Skype conferences or Zoom conferences or chat threads or Slack threads than it is to, go over and waste time at this meeting and have this bad coffee, or go to a conference and spend 2 days at some hotel in the suburbs of Philadelphia where we met a few weeks ago, or, Las Vegas or somewhere else. That's so inefficient. This is more efficient. But what people realize, and I've realized, is that there is no substitute for face-to-face. And again, this is the type of thing that you only sort of see when you take it away, right? That's the thing with technology, is once you replace technology with something new, only in using it and using the new thing and sort of putting the old thing aside, do you suddenly realize what the actual value of that older technology is, in this case, sort of analog technologies, right? And that value changes once it's been replaced. It almost acquires a new value. And so the value of the face-to-face now is that it isn't digital, right? The value of the face-to-face is that it is face-to-face, and it brings those things that the digital doesn't.
Yeah. What sort of improvements over digital does face-to-face have? Let's highlight some of those.
Let's say you and I met and, we were talking about the new Ghostbusters movie is going to have women in it. Mm-hmm. Would I threaten you with death for saying that and then take your phone number and address and send it out to everybody I know and say I'm going to kill and rape you because you held that opinion if I was face to face with you? No, I wouldn't. I would probably see the reaction in your face if I even ventured something like that and judge my opinion and the way I speak in that way, because you're a human being. And when you're face to face, you have emotions. You see how people react. You feel it viscerally. You have empathy. You can't help but have empathy. People who don't have that sort of empathy are people either on the spectrum of autism who can't calculate that, or psychopaths, right? The majority of us feel that. And so when you're with people in a conversation, you're getting all sorts of cues that aren't just the words that are coming out of their mouth. You're seeing their body language. You're seeing the way their faces. You see the way they react to what you say. You're able to engage with them on a human level and not just on the level of, words and ideas, which by themselves don't constitute a conversation. And that, whether you're dealing with friends and family, whether you're talking about social groups or, a network of social people who share a similar interest, or whether you're talking about sort of a larger, political consequences and conversations, that things can transpire in that way, and in those conversations that you just can't replicate in the same way with digital.
Yeah. Here we are, right? We're on Zencastr, we're on Zoom again. I'm able to see you, right? Is there something better about, being in presence that this video call cannot capture, right? Of course, I understand your point about, that empathy, right? But I feel some level of empathy towards you. It's hard.
Yeah.
But no, I feel some level of empathy.
It's a mediated one, right? It is very. This is the sort of shell basic 1.0 version of conversation. But if you and I were to be together in Los Angeles or Toronto or somewhere else and having this conversation, even recorded for the same podcast, it would be a very different conversation, right? Your body language, the way we talk, the conversation would be entirely different, even if you asked me the same questions. And that's because of the nature of conversation, in the way that you can have a phone call with your mother or your best friend or someone from work, and it's very different from a phone call, from that same conversation with that person face to face, right? You want the best example of this, it's the conference call. You get 4 people together working on a project in a room at a table, ideas are flying, things are going, you actually accomplish something. What's a conference call? It's like a pointless, worthless hell where
I'm thinking of that YouTube video that they did. If conference calls happened in person, I'm going to have to post the link under this.
Okay. Yeah.
It's and like that's buffering.
Right. It's buffering. And it's just this idea of like these awkward pauses because there's no body language there. Nobody could read any cues. It's everything happens in this sort of darkness. And I think that's a good metaphor for.
So it's safe to say you're not a believer in the distributed team at the workplace, because I know that's a trend, right? Now there's benefits to it, of course, but
and I think that's it, right? You have to measure what the benefits are. In certain ways, it makes sense, and certain things are actually more beneficial to it. So if people are working separately on very specific project related tasks, then they go off and they can do their things. And that's, that there's a value to that. And maybe that works for them, or it's better, more efficient. I write books. My publisher is based in New York. The designer of the book is based in Boulder, Colorado. My editor just moved back to the Boston area. So, it's pretty rare that we're all getting together and sitting in a room and talking. But yeah, when it comes down to the key meeting about how they're going to market and sell the book, I fly to New York and take that meeting in person, because it just wouldn't get anywhere on the phone, or it wouldn't get to nearly what it needs to get to. When I need to have those in-depth conversations with my editor or my agent about what it is I'm going to work on, the sort of key idea around it, I'm going to go and make sure I have that meeting and sit down with them for an hour or two and hash it out in a way that I can't on the phone. But then I go and spend months on my own, sitting at a keyboard, smacking away at keys, putting words together, right? And so I think, again, with the key to this, and the key to this sort of value of analog that we've realized in an era when everything is available to us digitally, is that, that value is change. And it really is about judging when and which technology works best for you, and judging it on its own merits, not judging it on the way that, Silicon Valley salespeople essentially say, this is the new thing, and if you don't accept it, you're a Luddite, you're behind, you want to get ahead, you want to be innovative, so please buy Zoom, buy this Cisco system, buy, switch everything to online or whatever. It's actually judging things on its merits, which should make sense for a scientifically based industry, right? It's let's try this, let's do an experiment. What works better for me, for us, for this project, for this task, for my family? And sometimes it's digital, sometimes it's analog. Usually it's some sort of mix of both. And that just reflects the actual world that we live in, not some hypothetical fantasy world.
Yeah, and you reference this in the book, right? I think the idea that someone writing about the power of analog or the resurgence of analog is a Luddite is easy for critics to say, right? But you mentioned in the book, it's not binary.
Yeah,
right? We all benefit from technology and the march forward of technology, and there is some level of progress there. And we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but sometimes, it goes too far, or we're not truly evaluating the pros and cons of these applications or these devices. And I think the example that you mentioned before with, the election of Trump and the abuse of user data is a perfect example, right? Like Facebook may improve our ability to share events with people, and therefore, to actually come together in analog form, right? That's actually where I find most of my events. And I've deleted Facebook before, and it has actually impacted my ability to show up places. Mm-hmm. However, on the flip side, it's collecting data about me and pushing me towards cohorts that are more like-minded, or sending me information that's going to infuriate me because a meme has no, desire to be right or wrong. It just needs to spread, and fury and anger and rage help spread memes. And like attract like, that kind of mentality gets taken to a huge extreme online when, Facebook and Google create almost entirely unique internets for each one of us, in our kind of digital lives. So, I appreciate what you're saying. It's not one or the other. It's not zeros and ones. It's actually a healthy mix of the two. And what I think your book did is, now 2.5 years ago, I think it helped drive the conversation forward around, let's actually evaluate this new tech with a healthy skepticism, so that we know the pros and the cons, we have an awareness, and thus we're able to decide for ourselves what we want to do.
Yeah. And I think that is going to be the way, going forward. I mean, that's, this technology, computer technology, is going to continue to play a bigger role in our lives. But because of that, we need to judge what makes sense for us, and judge, its benefits and drawbacks, and make those decisions, whether it's in our homes or at work or other places. Right. So for an example, it's, like when those Amazon Alexa and all those smart speakers came out, again, it's pushed as, oh, this is great AI virtual assistants. And I think there's a lot of people who are like, oh, cool, I need this great new gadget. And a lot of people I know are like, no. I'm going to see how this plays out. Let's see what actually happens with this stuff. And then you hear all the stories of them being hacked and harvesting data and doing all this stuff, which of course is what it's designed for. Right. So it's like, does the value of this?
I want to pause there because I think that's the reason why I'm doing this podcast, is because that, of course, is not so apparent to everyone. Right. Especially in the way that this tech is marketed. Like Alexa and Google Dot and these other technologies are marketed as a way to increase the convenience of your lifestyle, right? So you want groceries, you don't need to make a grocery list and go to the store. You just say, Alexa, groceries, eggs, milk, whatever
yeast?
else.
Were you about to say yeast?
I was going to say yeast. I'm like, who buys yeast? It's Passover. I'm thinking about eggs, unleavened bread.
I need yeast. I need leavening.
And so, but seriously, I mean, now all of a sudden the groceries are delivered at your door.
Right.
And so I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's not as obvious to everyone. And so, we need to keep having these conversations around, okay, yes, Alexa adds convenience, but also Alexa's on all the time when she's in your house. Yeah. And she's going to tell, company Z that you go to the bathroom every 30 minutes, and they're going to send you, maybe you should see a doctor about that, which is actually
it's funny. My brother has officially become the most Jewish conversation ever. My brother someone, I guess, like his cell phone company was offering him free Google Home or something. He's like, I'm just going to put it in my washroom to listen to music in the shower. and then he'll like only send me like ads for Metamucil or like Pepto-Bismol.
Yeah, exactly. He's getting all the soap advertisements pushed in.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, sounds like you need to exfoliate.
So I think it's important for all of us to kind of decide what our habits and our lines are when it comes to technology use. So I'm curious, what kind of boundaries do you set in your life? And also, you have children. So what kind of boundaries do you set for your kids?
Yeah, I think, really for myself, so I've really weaned myself away from social media over the past couple of years. I deleted it off my phone.
What was your guilty pleasure on social media? Was it Twitter?
I was at Facebook and then increasingly Twitter, and between the two of those.
Yeah.
And
so you weaned yourself off entirely. Do you?
Well, not entirely. So now when I started writing the book I'm currently writing in January of this year, I was like, all right, I have to be productive. I have 6 hours of work that I have to do every day, and I don't have time for sort of wasting it on this place, which is what I do, right? I could justify by its work and my profile, but like it's wasting time. So I downloaded this plugin for my browser called Stay Focused, and it limits me to the set amount of time on social media each day.
Ooh, I'm going to download that.
And that time is now, I started it at 45 minutes and that was too much. And now I have 10 minutes. So 10 cumulative minutes a day that I can spend on Twitter or Facebook, and then it blocks me off for the remainder of the 24 hours, right?
It's called Stay Focused.
Yeah. It was a Chrome plugin. And that's great because I still get it. I still like, I'm there. I see, okay, whose birthday is it? Oh, wow, this person had a baby, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And that's it. It doesn't sort of suck me in.
Everyone's having a baby on Facebook. Everyone's getting married and everyone's having a baby.
Everyone's having back
or everyone's on vacation,
back surgery, and 40th birthday trips. So, so that's been a sort of big control. But listen, like I still have my phone with me all the time. I'm still spending all the time on my computer. So it still is there, like this constant presence in my life. And it is that notion of controlling it. And so I think the family is a pretty firm limit. I really try to, draw that line when I'm with my children, and with my wife to try to be present and stay away from it. And I do my best with that. I really do. But, it's hard. Sometimes you're like, oh, if there's something going on, you got that phone, you take a quick glance while the kids are there, and then you look down, your kid's been talking to you for 2 minutes, and you don't listen to them. And with my kids, I really, and this was based on a lot of the research I did around education and, kids and screens, I really try to keep them away from it.
How old are your kids?
My daughter's turning 6 in about 3 weeks, and my son's 2.5. So she's, she wants it. She wants the game on the phone. She wants to look at pictures. He's sort of semi-oblivious to it. They watch cartoons on Saturday morning and Sunday morning. My Netflix went down actually last week, and I can't get it back up. And even Netflix can't figure out. So I'm now being forced into analog. They know, but they know. Like the word Netflix has become one of the earliest words of these. They know it. They know it's down with it. They know how to. My daughter knows how to move around on it.
And when you're out, like you're out at a restaurant or something, and
no, my kids are the kids destroying the restaurant. They're not the dutiful children who are next door and, on their iPad staring at it with headphones, and the parents are enjoying a quiet meal. That is the cross that we as parents die on, right? That we have chosen that to be our sacrificial moment. And there are times when it is terrible. And there's times when we would like, okay, look at pictures on our phone. Like we don't have any games, but just like, take it, just please, like, shut up. Right. But I think there's that temptation. And what happens is kids, first of all, it becomes a crutch. It becomes a habit. So I have friends who's like every morning their kid gets half an hour of iPad so the parents could get dressed. But like, that's a habit that then gets built into it. Right. Or at dinner, every time they go out,
like a methadone.
Yeah. It's just, they have that, right? That's their thing. The other thing is, and there's probably some wonderful studies and science you can quote behind it, but I'm going to give you my own science.
Okay.
The more screen time kids have, the bigger assholes they become. They're awful.
What's the formula?
Awful creatures. Yeah. They're like, you put the kids in front of a TV, you give them a computer, give them a tablet, you give them a phone, and get after an hour of that, they are just horrible human beings.
And it's probably the same for us.
Yeah. You try to take that away and they go batshit. They freak out. They start fighting with their siblings. They fight with you. It doesn't engender good social behavior. And I think you see it pretty basically with kids. So, we set those limits and we try to adhere by them. But there's a lot of Paw Patrol that goes on in this house. And that's, listen, I watched a lot of cartoons as a kid too. So, and I played a lot of Nintendo.
Me too.
It's about having those limits, right? It's about having those limits and having a time where the parents are like, all right, get outside, like go.
Yeah, I always found like, because I didn't have, iPad, iPhone when I was kind of going through my younger years, but there were kids whose parents didn't allow them to watch TV, let's say, right?
Right.
And I always found it, somewhat awkward when they would come over and, if the parent would say like no TV, and then we'd have to figure out something else to do,
Or if they did, they all of a sudden turned into monsters. Like a good analogy is I was at a birthday party for my daughter, one of my daughter's friends a few weeks ago, and they had a piñata. And, there's these two girls who are twins, and they're like the no sugar twins, right? They're never allowed refined sugar. They're super healthy.
Oh, no, I see where this is going.
These kids, it was like a colonial land grab. These two girls jumped into the middle of the floor with all the candy, elbowed other kids, like physically elbowed them away because their parents weren't there, and just like laid down on their bellies and stuffed as much candy under their body mass as they could and just like lay there. So yeah, you can have a bit of a, there's limits.
Yeah. Like the rubber band snaps back. I feel like if it's, I guess it's in the way we deliver it. Mm-hmm. I don't have kids, but I have a niece and nephew, and they're around the same age as your kids. When we're out to dinner together with my sister and my brother-in-law, if the kids are going crazy, it's like, just give them the iPad.
Yeah, it's going to work.
Yeah, it works, but it's, but obviously we don't know what the effects are. There is science, I think, that's showing certain aspects, of, certain social behaviors or antisocial behaviors.
We know the effects aren't good, right? They're probably not disastrous, but we know it's not positive social behavior. And we know that from,
I'm just curious,
our lives as adults. Like,
I'm just curious if these kids are developing like superhuman, powers.
No, see, that's and this is the thing. Again, this is the sales pitch, right? This is what, the ed tech people have been selling, and everyone is like, oh, well, if you don't give your kid an iPad every day, how are they going to prepare for the computers of the future? How are they going to be, able to work in Silicon Valley? It's like, do you think that
why
Steve Jobs grew up with a goddamn iPad?
Yeah.
Or Bill Gates, right? They were out playing outside, and then they got into computers and whatever. It's not like every person who becomes a lawyer or an accountant was like playing lawyer as a child. I mean,
there's a line, right? Like there is educational material on those devices. If they're on that device watching a YouTube video of another kid opening gifts for 2 hours, right, which is like the most popular social media influencer in the world, is some kid that now has his own line of toys, just like popping open toys all day.
Yeah.
I don't think that's really training them for the computers of the future.
No, it's training them for consumption. My daughter watches videos of LOL dolls, which is a fresh cancer.
I opened my first LOL doll 2 days ago.
Cancer pumped out of China's factories. It's captivating my life.
Put so much plastic wrapping on that thing. It's like 6 layers. That's the LOLs for the parents.
It's like the analog social media for kids. It's awful. But she watches like people playing with them and opening them and kids doing things about them, and it's like there's no benefit there, right? It's pure, it's entertainment. It's like, what did He-Man train us for? Nothing.
Yeah. He might have trained us to be, better men, I guess, or manlier men. It didn't really work out.
I was going to make a joke about anyway, that would have been.
I wish you made it. No.
Can't do it these days. But but it was interesting because when I researched in the book about ed tech and the ed tech world and technology in schools, this is what a lot of schools have persistently rushed into. Every generation, whether it was with PCs or with internet in schools or tablets or other devices. And now you're seeing it with this sort of online learning programs. This is going to prepare us for the future. This is the future of education. This is what we have to do. Forget about art class. We're going to cancel that. Forget about drama. We're spending all our money on these devices. And then, they rush into it headlong in this belief that this is what we need. And then the evidence comes out that it actually does nothing better, and in many cases is worse for the actual education of those students. And this is the same at, the early childhood education, the elementary education, the high school level, up to the, university level. But time and again, that cycle repeats itself.
Maybe you just identified one of the main issues here is we're constantly thinking about preparing for the future, that we're forgetting or not observing what's happening in the present.
Ooh.
You like that?
Yeah, that's good. It's true.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, buy the technology for the world you'd live in, not the world you want to live in. And I think you see that when people adopt stuff so readily, for the future, it has a cost, right? There's a reason to wait and be patient. It doesn't always favor the first adopters, because that technology takes us a while to figure out how to use it. You're in the blockchain world, and that's still a ways away from people actually figuring out how to genuinely properly use that technology. And if you rushed into, turning your iced tea company into a blockchain company, you're kind
Long Island blockchain company.
Yes, your Long Island blockchain company.
Is that what I sound like?
I think so, yeah. Or like a Billy Joel.
After a couple of drinks, maybe.
A couple of iced teas and a Billy Joel song or two.
Oh yeah, love a good Billy Joel song.
But I think again, it's this idea of like, how could we future-proof ourselves? What can we adopt today? And so it goes from one buzzword to another and one thing to another. And like, eventually that technology is going to find its right form and get to you, and you'll be able to use it and you're going to be okay. But what can you use today? What's going to make you happier, more productive, better? What's going to work for you now? And some of that might be some of that new digital technology, and some of that might be something that's as simple as a piece of paper and a pen.
What works for you?
Nothing. Yeah. Great.
Self-hatred,
I think. Doesn't work.
An ancient technology. Self-hatred.
Yes.
Passed down generation to generation.
Well, it depends what I'm doing, right? So let's say writing a book, which is what I spend, every 3 years doing, and then, go out and tour about it, promote it, and try to sell it.
How long does it take to write a book?
Like,
typically. You're a great writer, by the way. I just have to throw it out there. Yeah. I love the prose.
Generally from the beginning of the process of thinking about an idea and working through a proposal to the time the book comes out, it's 2 to 3 years, right?
2 to 3 years.
Yeah, okay. Of research and writing and editing.
Most of it's research.
For me, yeah, because I'm a journalist. So, there's different parts of that process that I use different technologies for, right? When I first start thinking about that idea, I'm just going through notepads and scribbling down words and thoughts and ideas and just going through it to get it out. And then I'll take those things and circle what I like and think about it and have conversations and start typing it out in Microsoft Word and refine that and print it out and circle things again and go back and forth in that until I have what works. And then, once I'm underway with the book and the publisher's on board, I will go out and do interviews. And, most of those interviews, if I do them in person, I bring a notebook and I write as I have conversations, and I don't record it and I don't videotape it. It's very much the conversational thing, because I found that when I do turn on the recording device, or if I do sit there and type on a laptop, which I tried early on and stopped doing, the conversation changes. People put up walls, right? And I want it to be as natural as possible. And I want to be able to get the ideas that I need down, and that works in pen and paper.
Do you use Moleskine?
No, I use these notebooks that I have made for me by this company in Toronto, because I like the spiral notebook, because I need to be able to fold it over backwards so I can write standing up while I'm walking through a factory or a farm or wherever I'm interviewing someone. And then I'll take all that and go through the notes and go through all my research, many of which are phone conversations that I had over Zoom or on the phone. And I'm, just typing those out as I'm writing them or recording some of them. I'll go through all that research. I'll go through it, and then I'll take giant sticky notes that I go to buy at Office Depot. Or
how big are the sticky notes? Are they like?
I'm looking at one right now.
Size of a head?
Yeah, they're. Yeah,
I don't think I've ever seen one of these before.
They're like this.
Oh yeah, that's giant.
Right?
That's like the size of a human body.
This is, about a chapter of the book, and I'm just going through and getting out ideas. This is about our mutual friend,
cool.
John Clippinger, and his company that you worked with. And this is about the second last chapter of the book. And that's just like, okay, how can I get these ideas out in just some visual way? Because I can't just plunge into writing, 8,000 words right from the get-go. I need to take all these ideas and organize them in some visual way that I can see. And I've also done it with, 40 Post-it notes on my wall, and it's all imperfect, but it's just like, here's all the ideas. Okay, now I can move them around. Now I can see them. Now I can go back into Word and write. And then, then it's doing all of that in Microsoft Word for months at a time, and then editing it and then printing it out and then going. So it's like, it moves back and forth between digital, analog, digital, analog, digital, analog. And that's what works for me. And that is totally different from what works for the writer down the street, or the writer, this writer or that writer. Everybody's workflow is different.
You just live on a block of writers.
Yeah.
Just the writer on every corner.
I think I'm the only one, as far as I know. But, this is something that works differently for everyone. And I think the idea that there's one technology that's the perfect technology for the way we work and everybody should work this way is a really naive and foolish thing to do.
Well, there's a couple of things you just said there. I mean, the first is there's not one solution. And that's something that keeps coming up. This is now, I think, my 8th episode, and I'm always like, what's the answer, or what is the prescription that you would give? And it sounds like it's kind of a right size, not a one size fits all type.
Well, and again, that is, as you alluded to earlier, right? That is the binary language of digital, right? In digital, things are a 1 or a 0. It is an Apple or a Samsung, right? That there is no gray area. There's no in between. And everything has to fit within that perfect box, because that's how software works. But in the rest of the world, you use a combination of different things, identities, ideas. The way you work, the way you live is fluid and constantly changing and filled with all sorts of nuance. And you can't just encapsulate all that nuance in a piece of technology. So, we're sold this solutionism by Silicon Valley. And we're sold it in the same way that Coca-Cola sells us a lifestyle, right? It is consumerist solutionism. This is the solution for your problems, and there's no one solution for the problems. There are things that can help in certain ways, but there's always a trade-off.
Yeah, and I think we're experiencing that today. Is what we're seeing is, the march forward towards solution, and then the pullback of, oh wait, these were the trade-offs that we didn't realize we were making.
This solution created a problem. What's the solution to this?
Yeah,
more technology
exists within it.
Yeah,
and it seems like it is, right? Like you even met, I've interviewed 2 people. Both of them are really good friends. One of them is taking the technologist approach to solving some of the problems created by technology, similar to the Google Chrome plugin that you mentioned earlier, which is like, I'm going to tell you when you've used too much of this.
Yeah.
And I'm almost going to be a timer to stop you. The other is saying, the solution to these problems is actually more time with humans in the real world, and taking that approach and encouraging people to put their technology away and then communicate in person. And I think both of those make sense.
Yeah. And again, it's in combination, right? What do you do? And this is, I think, the value of the sort of analog pleasures and things like books and records and drawing and, all these different technologies, board games that have come back. It's like, what do you do when you put your phone down? Like, we're not all going to go sit in, a yoga pose and do our Kundalini Adi Shakti mantra for
Why
30
not
minutes.
though? It's so fun.
Right? Not everybody can do that. So what do you do? And I think there's this fear that if we do put that thing away, what do we do? Who am I? How am I going to entertain myself? What do I do if there's a moment of silence?
It's more than a fear. It's actually chemically ingrained. So on these brick retreats that my friend hosts, which are these phone-free kind of events.
It's like Brazil, Russia, India, China.
No, not that brick. Brick like you turn your phone into a brick. You just turn it off.
Right.
Yes. But yeah, not that. I've seen people have like legitimate breakdowns, or have mentioned that I had to go back to my tent to cry because I was in a conversation for 10 minutes and then I started getting that familiar feeling of anxiety, and I reached for my phone and it wasn't there. And so I walked away and I realized, wow, I realized that I've been using this thing as a crutch unconsciously, to take me out of these moments of boredom or anxiety. And I think that we all fear that kind of that silence, as you referenced, that you don't, just because you put your tech away doesn't mean you have to sit in silence. It's you can still do stuff.
There's a world of wonderful things out there. And I think we forget that those are the things that we get the most from. What is a memory you have of social media?
I have memories on social media, but
what are your memory of social media? Is there a time where you're like, oh, I remember that time I was having that great conversation with someone, or that connection I made? You don't, right? Everything out there that matters, even everything on social media, even everything on Instagram, is the stuff that happens in the real world. It's that one that's the only one that matters. It's the only world that matters, right? And I think that's the thing that we had lost, or we're losing sight of, and maybe in some way we're sort of realizing that and trying to reclaim it.
I think that we are trying to reclaim it. I used to work in the music festival industry, as some listeners might be familiar with. I think the resurgence of music festivals in a lot of ways was because people were craving that connection. They were craving that in-person time. In its own way, it's become consumerized. Many movements get co-opted. I think, Instagram has had that effect on festivals. You go to Coachella and you're in the front of a stage, and I would say maybe 75% of the people are recording on their phones.
I was there.
And, it's that classic image of just the phone is up, right? And oftentimes it's these festivals can be really challenging too. You lose your friends, you can't find them. There's 130,000 people. You don't get to the house. You lose your phone, all these things.
You took the bad acid.
Yeah. You took the bad acid. Exactly. You're having a terrible trip. And then all of a sudden it's a year later, the only thing that you remember is that curated photo you took on Instagram that reminds you how much fun you had at that festival, even if it was possibly one of the worst experiences of your life. And it's easy to forget, because of this weird thing of social media where we're just presenting these avatars of our experiences.
Yeah, it's been interesting as I stopped posting photos a long time ago to social media. I think it was after I.
Do you take photos still?
I take photos. Yeah, of course. I have kids. Okay. It's just an endless stream of my children. But I stopped posting them to social media. I think it was. There was a point when Instagram was, I don't know, just acquired by Facebook, and it was a year or so into it, and they quietly changed their terms of service where they're like, "Hey, we own your photos," and someone just
do you read the terms of service?
No, God no. But someone discovered it, and it was all over the news, and I was like, you know what? I don't need this. I don't need this information out there. I don't need my photos of me. So unless it's here's my cover of my book coming out, or here's something about me and work wise, I just don't, it's not there. Definitely no pictures of my kids, none of that. And so it's interesting. Like I take photos, but I'm not posting it. And the biggest time I see this is every year I go away on a ski trip with 6 friends. And 2 of them are really heavy Instagram users. And it got to the point where 2 years ago on a trip to Jackson Hole, they were like editing photos on the chair on every ride out.
And it's a blizzard,
and it's just their hands everything. Like no, but it's just like everything was about that. Everything was about that. Getting that shot, doing that thing. It sort of changed it, and I was just able to ski and enjoy myself.
Did you say anything to them in that moment?
I tried to, and this is the thing, right? You can't be like the parent to your friends. You can't be like, hey, Dan, like, come on. And he's like, what the hell? Oh, Mr. Analog. That's what I get. Or with my brother, who is, very into Twitter for his work. And that's part of what he does. And it's become a bit of his thing, but he's on it all the time. And it's really hard to have those conversations. You really can't. You can't do it because you become, you don't want to become the school marm.
I think that's true. I think, there's this famous quote, I'm blanking on it, but I think it's for the workplace. It's like offer criticism generally and praise individually, something like that.
Did you read that on the wall of a WeWork you were at recently?
I actually have it on my wall right now.
My analog phone. Sorry.
I'll get it. Well, so my point is, I think if we set rules for ourselves, like, for example, I've been doing this recently and the response has been, at least in person, pretty positive. Who knows if these people will ever have dinner with me again. But if I go out to dinner with a person, a friend, a coworker or whatever, or group, I just say,
love interest.
There's only one. Hi, Jenny. I just say, look, like, I've been making my meals phone free. I find that I have better conversations, that I'm more engaged, I'm less distracted. So like if you, would like it if you could do that with me. There's nothing worse than sitting across the dinner table.
Also gluten-free, sugar-free, and dairy-free.
Is that what I am? Am I like
welcome to LA?
Guy? Yeah. Well, actually, I just did this at a vegan restaurant 2 nights ago. So there you go.
There will be there is no joy here. I'm sorry. All we have is conversation because this food is.
Yeah, but this is the challenge, right? Because there's nothing worse for me. There are worse things, but there's just this, it's terrible when you're sitting at the table with someone and the phone comes out, plop down on the table right in front of them. And, they put the phone so the screen's facing down as though like that's a sign that they want to pay attention. But then every few minutes, it's not even their fault and it's unconscious. They're checking the time. And perhaps that's just because I'm not providing them with engaging conversation. So maybe I shouldn't be doing this podcast, but I think it's just automatic. Right. And it ruins it for them. And I've been that person. That's why I'm trying to do this, because I've been that guy. And I mentioned this in previous episodes. Like I will leave a dinner table to go to the bathroom to like check my email. Yeah. If I'm feeling like a little bit like I have something at work or, that I need to get to, and this dinner is taking just a touch too long, I feel that pull of my device.
And that was a social behavior that just happened overnight. And this is, brings me back to what you had talked about in the book, that dinner party I had at a friend's apartment, in 2007, right? And all of a sudden my wife, who's then my girlfriend, and I were the only couple of the 4 couples at the table who weren't on their Blackberries. And it was just this thing that I had never seen or experienced before. And it was like, well, this is what the rest of the life is going to be like, pretty much. But it seems to have changed a little bit. It seems to have, there seems to be a little of a realization now that, that for certain people, for a certain generation, that isn't necessarily cool. And I think it changes by what society you're in, by what country you're in, by who your group is and social things. But, the only way you can do it is to lead by example. And if you're like, look, it's like being a vegetarian or vegan. It's like, I'm not going to lecture you. I'm not going to, like preach to you, I'm going to just do this.
But look at my vegan superpowers.
Yeah, but look, you should see my poop. It is.
So that's about an hour. I know.
Let's leave. Let's end on that.
We had a hard stop. Yeah, let's end. Everybody poops. I actually did an episode with Mickey Agarwal about her company Hello Tushy.
I'm a big fan of the bidet toilet seat.
Oh, there it is. Is that a Toto toilet?
No, it's Brondell, which is I think it's an American one. It's like half the price.
Do they have those in Canada?
Yes, it's half the price. We have anuses in Canada. Yes, and close.
Well, before we go, what's next for you?
So right now, I'm currently finishing up the first draft of the next book I have coming out in just around a year from now. It's called The Soul of an Entrepreneur. And it is about work and life beyond the startup myth. So it really is about what it means to be an entrepreneur today, when that word, especially through social media and through Silicon Valley, has become commodified and really associated almost exclusively with the Silicon Valley model of starting up and being an entrepreneur, when 99% of the entrepreneurs who work for themselves, have their own businesses that are out there in the economy and in the world, don't fit into that mold. And so it's a bit of reclaiming what it means and examining how we got to that point.
I love that. And I would love for you to come back on, and hopefully we could do it in person to talk about it.
Once you get all that Squarespace money and this thing gets
yeah, exactly. And Zoom if you're listening,
or Zencaster.
I don't know if I'll do sponsorships. We'll see. I have to think about that, because some podcasters that I really, really respect don't do it. They do the Patreon route.
Right.
Or many of them have now deleted Patreon and are going a different route of donation straight on the page. Yeah, because Patreon was censoring, and some people are against censoring free speech.
I didn't know that.
I don't know where I stand on that one. There's certain speech that I think, if we're promoting it, anyways, it's a slippery slope. But I really like that your topic, because I think we are in a phase where we're promoting toxic entrepreneurship a little bit.
Ooh.
Like the idea of fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Obviously we've seen what happens with that, with Fire and with Theranos, when it goes too far.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's the worship of a certain type of entrepreneurship and this idealized, mythologized version of it, which has kind of been sold to us and is the thing that people are chasing. But entrepreneurship's a much broader, realer, more human experience than that, and so it tries to look beyond that to all sorts of different entrepreneurs, from Syrian refugees and immigrants here in Toronto who've sort of gone into the food business, to people who do it in sort of family businesses, or people who are doing it specifically for, values. But again, beyond the headlines, beyond the hashtags, to the reality of what it means to be an entrepreneur.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to reading it.
Thanks, man.
And I'm looking forward to having you back on.
Thank you.
And thanks so much for coming on. It's been really fun.
A pleasure. My invitation to Toronto still stands.
Thank you for listening. I hope that you enjoyed that episode, and I hope that you're enjoying the podcast. It's been a really fun ride so far. I just get so excited every time I meet some of these incredible people, and just love sharing their stories and ideas with you all. You can learn more about the show at thelookuppodcast.com. That's THE, lookuppodcast.com. You can follow me on social media at Wark Meinstein, WARCMEINSTEIN, on both Twitter, Instagram, and Medium, and Facebook. We have a Facebook page for the show as well, The Lookup Podcast, on Facebook. So check us out. You can also subscribe to our mailing list on the website for more future updates. If there's anything from the show that you want to catch, I've posted that in the show links for you to check out. And if there's any way that I can improve, please let me know. Feel free to reach out. If you have any guest recommendations, please let me know. Other than a couple of individuals who are helping me out in the background, this is a passion project and I'm always open to feedback and any kind of support. I want to thank Sam Palumbo and Patch Kid Music for the sound editing and the intro and outro song that he created. And I want to thank Hello There Collective for their support on my social media. You can check them out at hellotherecollective.com. All right, that's enough for me. I'm sure you're ready to go on to your next activity. Thank you for listening. And please come back again next week for another episode of the Look Up podcast.